All right, here we go. Yes, we are live on this Wednesday. Pete says we're good to go. Let's go, everybody. Yes, it is the chosen one. My goodness, it's cold out, isn't it? We are in for some brutal weather, as a matter of fact. But the good news is, what is the good news? No, the good news is that we're each day we're getting, well, not exactly breaking news, but each day we're getting closer to February 1st. And February 1st should lead us to March 1st, which leads us to April 1st. And I think you get the general idea. All right, there's Lynn Miller. Lynn checks in. Yes. All right. I think you get the general idea. Yeah, and all of our sound, I believe, is fine. So, folks, we're going to start. Thank you very much, Lynn Miller. Yes, trying to stay warm like everybody else. This is I was out this morning taking care of some business. It's never ending, but we're gonna have a great hour. um, we shared on the Facebook page. There's some criminals in the news, and we did share that. Make sure you share it. Boy, that's a new low. This guy at Twin River at Lincoln Greyhound. I mean, there is security video of him stealing an elderly woman's handbag. There's Janet Dwyer. Yes, nice and clear. Feeling very good about our setup. Also, you can you can tell the audio. There's Henry B. Yes. I may even touch on Greenland a little bit. I know most people would not, but I may touch on it. I'm not exactly sure what everyone else is saying about it, but I have some thoughts on it. Hold on, where am I? Um, there. Okay. Well, we are solid. Yep. Let me see. Um, it was. We're getting very good reaction. Everybody really liked hearing Vic Miller yesterday. Yes, criminals. ICE is trying. They get some cooperation. I don't think they get all the cooperation that they should be getting. They're certainly not getting it in Providence, which I don't understand because you would think that would be the one city. If they could clean up the ICE situation or the illegals in Providence, it would make a huge dent, as you can imagine. Um, that's really where the bulk of them are. So, but Mayor Smiley had his press briefing yesterday. Or Mayor Smiley, he is out in the news. You know, I saw some people putting, hi there, Pat, there's Nicole. Yes, we have some news to get to. I like that. I'm going to tell you what's new going on. I like the, I mean, the president really wants Greenland. He was, and certainly making it. I'm looking at a headline: Trump approval at 35%. I don't believe that that's true. I don't think a lot of people believe that that's true. So they can put that all they want, but I think people are tired of all the nonsense that's been going on. I know I am. I find it refreshing what he's involved in, trying to, and it does make sense when you think about it. I mean, you don't hear anyone really explain the argument that all of these people should be here, and specifically, there were some people. There was a small protest in Providence, and some of the signs are, let them all go. Let them all go. Yeah, let's not have any police. See, I don't mind that because it does highlight exactly who they are and exactly what they want. which is chaos. That is exactly right, Marianne. See, that's the thing. Yes, and it's on our hemisphere. No, Greenland's got our name written all over it. Not that I would go there on vacation, but I'm going to start. There was also a good piece. We'll start, folks. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for tuning in. Yes, this is the chosen one. We do have the video up on our website, dpetro.com, that shows that we were the first ones that had it. That wild chase last Thursday started as a police chase in Warwick, and then you see the arrest, and then the guy tried to flee, and they ask him, what's going on? Why were you running? Oh, I got scared. He also, they believe, was under the influence. So there's Tommy Bryant checking in. TB, folks, this portion of our program, check out the Coesit Inn, 226 Coesit Avenue, West Warwick. Remember, lunch, dinner, drinks in the lounge. They're open 7 days a week. And on top of that, they can accommodate a large group or a small group. I see people wander in solo, belly up to that huge bar area, which I love. See, I'll share with you what I like about the Coesit Inn. Admittedly, if I'm dining, I don't want to hear anyone from my table chewing, but I certainly don't want to hear someone from another table chewing. And let alone right now, where there's just so many people that are coughing and sneezing. And did these people learn anything from 2020 about washing your hands and you don't go out if you're sick and the spreading of the germs? You don't have that at the Coesit Inn. They know I like to be spread out. As a matter of fact, when I go there, and they're so kind, they set up a buffer zone where there's no one 2 tables close to me and no one 2 tables behind me. It's not a safety thing. It's just, I don't need to hear someone who I don't even know, a stranger at a table next to me, chomping on their croutons. But my point is, at the Coesit Inn, you're nice and spread out. And that bar area is terrific. And it is the biggest bar, I believe, in the state. It's so terrific. And remember, they can handle a large group. I was in there on a Saturday, they had 50 people coming in. I was in there on another Saturday, they had 100 people coming in from a funeral. The Coesit Inn, 226 Coesit Avenue in West Warwick. And now they also have the coffee at Coesit right there in the front. Now, when we're talking about energy, I like to remind you about Propane Plus. Propane is a tremendous source of energy. And remember, the thing about propane is it's energy for everyone. It's not like these silly wind farms. Propane is affordable, it's sustainable, it's equitable, it's good for the environment, and it's renewable. Propane Plus. Log on 24/7 online at propaneplus.com. You can call them in Rhode Island at 401-885-4209 or in Massachusetts 508-252-3359 for Propane Plus. Now, I want to mention, oh my goodness, I can't even imagine, Lynn Miller. People blowing their nose while you're reading, that is beyond, that's not in my realm. Right? We want to talk about safety first, but I'm all about manners first. No, and I've talked about that. I went through this. It's a downside of being in the courtroom. When I was covering the Reed trial, and then even when I was in court for the Brian Walsh case, it's tough when you're in, the media, they had us so close. There's people that are coughing. There's people that are sneezing and not covering their mouth. People blowing their nose in public. You're supposed to step into the hallway. If you're at a restaurant, you should either go into outside of the dining area, preferably the restroom. Some people, I just think a lot of people don't know. For whatever reason, it's tolerated, but it's unacceptable. And especially this time of year with the amount of germs that are flying, and germs are spread. Just remember that. Whenever someone is sick, and I think some people don't understand what I say, but I sometimes will say, well, who did you get that from? Right? Because you got it from someone. Someone gave you that germ. It didn't come to you like the tooth fairy in the middle of the night. So it was either someone you were out with, someone you greeted, and it could be, remember, germs transfer. You shake hands with someone, you're sick. You shake hands with them, and then they go and they're shaking hands with a bunch of people, and it's spread, 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 spread. So, but anyhow, and especially right now, it is apparently it's very, very heavy. But I continue. I went the entire year last year, not sick one day. Folks, I have not been, I'll talk about it. I have not been sick since December of 21. And I know how I got COVID a second time, and I know how I got it. I got it from a family member. But I'm not counting the cancer surgery because I didn't cancer isn't contagious. It suddenly was in my body, so I don't count that. But just as far as cold and cough and these people, they're down with the flu, and you have to be cautious with who you're around, especially around selfish individuals that are oblivious to spreading, germs as if it's your fault. I can't even imagine I cannot, if you were in an office setting and either the boss forces people to come in, even though they're sick, or being around someone who is sick and then getting everyone else sick. And I do understand with the public sector people, they get ridiculous amount of sick days and they don't use them for sick days. They just build them in, but it's so avoidable. I remember during COVID, these people would say, "Notice you don't hear about the flu anymore." Well, why didn't we hear about the flu in 2020? It's because people were staying home, people were not shaking hands, people were not going into crowds, people were wearing masks. Remember, the mask is not to protect you from getting the germ, it's to protect the person that has it on, who's then ideally sneezing or coughing into the mask. But I'd see those postings. Notice you don't hear anything about the flu. Well, children were not encouraged to go to school. People were working remotely. People were not going out as much. People were washing their hands, wearing gloves. So yeah, so it didn't spread. So, all right, that's not what I actually want to talk about. I do want to talk about what is going on in how I think the false information, and you're really seeing it, that as I have talked about, and one of the reasons I enjoy talking with Justin Katz is we seem to be on the same page about the local media. And what I'm talking about with local media is that they don't seem to like to explore certain stories. And I want to touch on the situation with Mayor Smiley made news regarding his verdict or whatever it is. I don't fully understand it. I understand. You got to realize during the course of the Brown shooting, I mean, I was obviously interacting with the mayor, the people from his office, the police, all the police elected leaders. And he was put in a very difficult situation because of the way things were being run at Brown University. And I think they are changing things now. But before I talk about what, Mayor Smiley is making news about this, I do want to remind you about Capital Fence. Call my friend, the owner, Mike Rizzo. Folks, remember, nothing matters, as I like to say, nothing matters if people don't feel safe. If you don't feel safe in your home, you're not going to want to live there. If you live in a neighborhood, you could have a beautiful home in a beautiful yard. If you're not safe, it's a game changer. Capital Fence. There's nothing wrong. Put a fence around your property. And then people that are strangers or illegals or whoever, when they're casing homes, they gravitate towards the homes that don't have fences. That is a proven fact of crime. Capital Fence. So whether it's security or privacy, or maybe you have a small child or pet, Capital Fence, 401 618 4407, located in Cranston. They could install a fence or a gate, residential or commercial, most trusted for privacy and security, serving Rhode Island and Massachusetts. Repair and maintenance, highest quality. It'll last for years, unlike the Washington Bridge. Capital Fence, they do installation. They can do an automated gate. I love those. You see the people coming home, the automated gate opens the driveway, then it closes. Free estimate, and they're licensed and insured. Call Mike Rizzo, 401 618 4407 or online at capitalfenceri.com. I did want to mention there was a good piece in the Wall Street Journal, and I want to just quickly pull it up because I noticed that it's lost, and I recognize something that what we saw happen that kicked off this whole thing with Renee Good and the woman in Minneapolis. But there was a good piece written in the Providence Journal entitled Mayor Fry's Season of Love. And part of it is missing in most of this any discussion around what happened. And you have Gabe Amo, Congressman Amo, in embarrassment, calling it a murder. Other Democrats, obviously, some of the usual suspects of socialists, but missing in most of the understanding is that the sides aren't equal. And that has been missing from the discussion. The president has the legal authority to do what he's doing. Those trying to interfere with ICE actions don't. If ICE is really the problem, why is there no crisis in red states? And I want you to think about that. Because all we've been hearing, oh, get ICE out. And you have the local politicians and Mayor Smiley, the mayor of Providence, raising the white flag of surrender. But think about that. Why if ICE is truly the problem, as they try to lead us to believe in a place like Minneapolis, and I see other people, I mean, this has been going on for quite some time, but other people commenting, they got to get them all out of there, and ICE is just the problem. But ask yourself that. Is ICE a problem in Florida? Is ICE a problem in Texas? They have immigration problems, clearly, both states. Why is ICE not a problem in red states? Is ICE a problem in Cranston? No, the Cranston police, they try to work with them. The problems that ICE runs into are places like Providence and Central Falls and anywhere that the state is involved, like a courthouse where Governor McKee handles that. But this was written in the Wall Street Journal by William McGurn. In a better time, few outside Minneapolis would be able to name its mayor. The tragic shooting of Renee Good while she was using her SUV to thwart immigration custom from enforcing the law saw to that. And that mayor, get the ICE, get the blank out of Minneapolis. This is the guy that then starts to say, we need things peaceful. This is the same mayor who I hope he is indicted. I hope he is arrested, and I hope he goes to jail. Him and that clown Waltz, McKee's friend. This whole business of throwing gasoline and in telling locals, fight ICE agents on the street. They should go to jail for that. But Gurn writes, Renee Good wasn't a career criminal. She was instantly recognizable type, a liberal do-gooder who seemed to believe her political positions rendered her immune from the consequences of refusing an order from a duly authorized agent of law enforcement. By the way, that is something that should be called out. And I talk about it. The Providence Journal doesn't point out, as they're writing these glowing reviews of these activist groups, that these are federal agents authorized to conduct law enforcement operations. You know what else you don't hear mentioned? Our local media, and I'll throw in mass as well, is there's no new immigration laws. These are all the same laws that Biden and Harris had. They're just being enforced. He goes on, now she's dead. Her 3 children have lost a parent. Her name's been a slogan for the anti-ICE protesters. And amid all the coverage of the sad story, seldom is the most pertinent fact even mentioned. If Renee Good had simply obeyed an ICE agent's command to get out of the car, instead of continuing to drive, she would be alive. That too is a tragedy, and not only for her loved ones. Think about that. You don't hear Gabe Amos say that. You don't hear Seth Magaziner say that. You don't hear Matos say that or Governor McKee. All she had to do was obey the ICE agent's command, get out of the car, instead of driving at him, and she'd be alive. You certainly didn't hear that in Providence as they're trying to hang up signs saying ICE is not welcome. He goes on to write, it doesn't matter whether you support ICE. It doesn't matter what your stance on deportation is, or whether officers may have handled the arrest differently. I love this. The clear fact is that Good placed herself in grave danger by refusing to get out of her car as ordered. And that is an undeniable fact that no one can counter. And they can't counter it. And they don't try to counter it. Because instead they start, oh, what about this? And what about that? He writes, you'd never know that from the coverage. It's breaking down as expected. Each side retreats to its own camp. Trump administration has backed the ICE agent who shot Good. Justice Department investigating the mayor, the governor, whether either impeded law enforcement, public statements disparaging ICE. Mayor Fry and Walz give as good as they get. Shortly after she was shot, he said to ICE, get the blank out of Minneapolis. We don't want you here. Yeah, because that was peaceful. That was helpful. Over the weekend, he stuck to the line. ABC's Jonathan Carl asked, do you regret that statement? And what did he do? He tried to blame Kristi Noem. In the past, President Trump had the American people on his side on immigration. This is different. The coverage coming out of Minneapolis is eroding that support. Polls bear that out. And you are seeing these protests. I mean, I don't live in a bubble. I see it. 53% of those polled thought the shooting was unjustified. It is by no means an outlier. CNN poll said ICE is making American cities less safe, and you keep hearing that. They were saying that at the Smiley press conference. Listen to this line. Again, this is Wall Street Journal. Missing in most of this is the understanding that the sides aren't equal. President Trump has the legal authority to do what he's doing. Those trying to interfere with ICE actions don't. If ICE is really the problem, why is there no crisis in red states? You know, I like that. And he also talks about, I mean, those parading into the church are just disgraceful. But why would she need to get out of the car? Because she was told to get out of the car. She was ordered to get out of the car. That's why she was told. That's why she had to get out of the car. And I'm responding to someone, why would she have to get out of the car? That's what they were commanding her to do. I believe a lot of people seem to have a fundamental misunderstanding. ICE is very active in red states. ICE is very active in Florida. ICE is very active in Texas. ICE is very active in Arizona. Why is it only a crisis? Why isn't it a crisis in those states? ICE is very active in Georgia. Why is it only a problem in the blue states? Could it be because of the narrative from those in charge, and the police are told not to cooperate? So I think that is a big part of it, clearly. But also, there's also a fundamental misunderstanding. And some of this falls to the people telling these people, you have a right to protest. As if when the police are trying to arrest someone, you have the right to interfere. They're carrying out a lawful police activity, sworn federal agents or regular police, and yet people are told, no, you have the right to interfere. And as these people were told, you don't even have to get out of your car. It's like a drive-through, like going to Dunkin' Donuts. You don't even have to get out of your car. You can just use your car and block them in or block traffic or use that to interfere and honk the horn. And but it is interesting that some individuals still don't get that, you know. Why did she need to get out of her car? Because the police told her to get out of her car. We've also covered this, by the way, and we've even covered it with our legal expert, who is attorney Stephanie Murphy. You get pulled over, police lights are going on. You don't have the right to say, well, I just want to run home and use the bathroom. Doesn't work that way. You don't have to take my word for it. Try it next time. Try it if you were going to get pulled over. Well, she was trying to flee. She was told to get out of the vehicle. It's all she had to do. And she'd be alive right now. Folks, this portion of our program is brought to you by Watson Materials. Call them today. Free estimate. Call Watson 401 885 0600. 401 885 0600. Watson Materials, whether it's landscape lighting, pavers, retaining walls, natural stone, cobblestone. Watson Materials. Call now. Find out what they have. Complete selection of landscape materials in Rhode Island. Plan your project for the spring now. Watson Materials. Call Sean 401 885 0600. So we talk quite a bit about some of the problems with our offshore wind situation. And I've also talked about, and I'm well aware, folks, that of course, and I'll just answer the question. Of course, there should be more coverage about it. Of course, should be more coverage that these wind farms, when the companies came in, they were told, if you want to do business in Rhode Island with the state of Rhode Island, you have to hand over your workforce to the AFL-CIO. Otherwise, you're not going to be able to do business in Rhode Island. And what's going on right now is a new fact sheet analyzing recent government economics. 26 right-to-work states, those that protect workers from being required to pay union dues, enjoy substantial advantages over the 24 states that still authorize union bosses to force workers to pay up or be fired. And folks, as we bring on our next guest, we've had him on. He's just fantastic. But I was having a conversation with a local business owner, and he's right now, under the gun, and they want to come in, and he's built this company from nothing, and they want to take over his workforce. And he said, can you imagine if Patriot coach Mike Vrabel, as he's setting out to head to Denver, instead was told, no, we're going to provide you with the players for your team. These are the players you're going to use, and these are the guidelines you're going to follow. And then you can do your best to try to coach them. And Vrabel could say, what are you talking about? I've been working with them. I've been building up. I've been getting them to believe in the program and the buy-in. And no, we're going to handle that and blah, blah, blah. Well, folks, joining us right now is, in fact, our friend Mark Mix of the National Right to Work. Mark, great to see you, and very intrigued to hear the latest with what you guys have put out.
Yeah, John, good to be with you, and a great metaphor for the New England Patriots and Coach Vrabel. I mean, that was well done. Well done.
Thank you.
Yeah, John, look, freedom works. We know that. We know that in the grand scheme of our country, but we know it also that freedom in the workplace works as well. And the data comparing forced unionism states versus right to work states is growing even more positive as it relates to how freedom in the workplace works from an economic development standpoint. And we just working with a group called the National Institute for Labor Relations Research, looking at economic data from 2014 to 2024. We'll have 2025 data sometime middle of this year. But the data is overwhelming, John, about what how freedom matters when it comes to economic issues like job growth and manufacturing job growth and disposable income. And the study by Niller just lays this out as clear as can be.
It's interesting, Mark. I've been watching some of the interviews of some of the business leaders at Davos, and they were all talking about how President Trump, through deregulation and just being more business friendly, how it's just such a world of difference how they operate. I'd love you to address, the Northeast. Rhode Island has this offshore wind. It's paused right now, but I've heard from people close to the project that when the companies were kicking the tire on setting up these offshore windmills in Rhode Island, Connecticut, the first thing they were told was, if you want to do business with us, you got to let the unions come in and take over the workforce and run your workforce.
Yeah, John, that's unfortunately, that's not unique. I mean, in states that, where you're building government projects or government funded projects or projects that have some government funding in it, what they use is what so-called project labor agreements. They use the
Yep.
Davis-Bacon laws. And basically, this is a stop to organized labor that says, if you're going to build anything here, you're going to build it with any taxpayer money, you can't allow non-union workers to work on those jobs. I mean, when you're bidding on a project and it says you have to have a union contract in order to be considered to get a project, that's how they do this. And unfortunately, during the Biden administration, just about anything that any federal government money in it was forced under these project labor agreements, saying you got to use union contractors. And John, we know this, that nearly 90% of all construction workers in America today are in non-union companies. So you're basically letting out-of-state large construction companies from California or from New York come in and say, we're taking these jobs from the folks in Rhode Island or the folks along the coast of the United States, and saying, we're only going to let union officials negotiate how these jobs are going to be conducted. It's outrageous. And the economic data indicates that it's bad for the state. It's bad for the worker. I mean, private sector job growth in right to work states versus non-right to work states, double in right to work states. Manufacturing job growth in right to work states versus non-right to work states, 10 times greater in right to work states than non-right to work states. And that all translates into opportunity and economic, and let's use the buzzword, John, affordability for
That's
American
right.
workers.
Yes. You know, Wallet Hub, Mark, just came out with a new ranking, and the state of Rhode Island and was ranked dead last, 50th for place to start a business. Connecticut was also there. Massachusetts, so they've improved their situation a little bit more, but I mean, it's right there in black and white. And what is so striking to me about that, Mark, is if you and I were going to start a business, the two states that have the biggest hurdles are Alaska and Hawaii, simply because of geographically and what it would take in order to, get transport things there and so forth. But to me, that is a major alarm bell going off that Rhode Island is ranked dead last for the worst state to start a business.
Yeah, John, and the data backs that up as well. When you talk to people that do site selection consulting, when a company comes and say, "Hey, we want to build a new plant, we want to locate a new facility, we want to invest in the growth of our industry," we know that site selection experts literally say half of the companies looking to expand or relocate will not consider a state that doesn't have a right to work law. And obviously, the right to work issue is just one piece of what is a portfolio of policies that basically attract industry. Unfortunately, it sounds like Connecticut doesn't have any of those policies,
No.
including the support of forced unionism in their state, and not thinking about how it impacts new growth, new investment, and new opportunities for folks in Rhode Island or Connecticut or Massachusetts, for that matter.
I know that some different individuals that try to bid on, for instance, and just so people understand, for highway projects, and they're totally shut out of it. And when they have been at conventions or meet various individuals, they routinely mention private companies in Florida that get contracted out to work on the highway, and the state doesn't interfere. And obviously, listen, they pay a good wage, they follow all the proper rules, they're just not unionized. It's incredible, Mark, that Florida, that is so attractive to people with their weather and lifestyle, but they also happen to be the top state to start a business. I'm curious your dealings in how you watch how it is for workers in Florida.
Yeah, indeed, John. And when you look at kind of the data, when it like CNBC talking about the best states for business, I mean, Virginia, our state of Virginia was ranked number one 3 times in the last 6 years. And when
Wow.
you look at it, when you see Georgia and you see Idaho and you see Wyoming, you see Utah, you see the top 10 states, I think all 10 are probably right to work states. There may be one non-right to work state in that equation, but that's probably a state that has responsible government at that point too. And we're still working on some of those states, but it is true, John, and it's unfortunate. And Florida is one of the states that attract. Texas. I mean, those states are attractive to companies looking to expand, relocate, and frankly, move from states like New York City or new areas like New York City, where the financial capital of the world may end up in Texas, based on the policies that are now part of Mondami's agenda in the city and the agenda of your leaders in Connecticut and Rhode Island. I mean, they're not making good decisions for the taxpayers up there. That's for sure.
Mark, how can people find out more about the national right to work?
Yeah, if they're interested in what legislation is pending in the state legislatures, whatever state they're in, or the United States Congress, they can go to the committee's website at nrtwc.org. That's the committee's website where we're tracking legislation. If they're interested about their legal rights in the workplace, they can go to our foundation website, nrtw.org, to have questions answered about their rights in the American workplace.
All right, folks, he is our friend, Mark Mix. Mark, excellent job as always. It's going to be a big year, and we'll talk to you again.
Yeah. Thanks, John. Appreciate the opportunity.
All right, folks, there it is. Mark Mix right here on the John DePietro Show. Now, I do want to mention, I don't like to get distracted by comments, but I'm going to address something because sometimes there are people that are so blinded over their dislike of the president that they just throw things out that aren't even grounded in reality. So, and then if you're in my situation, you have the choice. I could ignore it or I could address it head on. And I'm going to address it right now. But folks, this portion of the program is brought to you by Kids Club on the Pike. Call them today. Now remember, they are fantastic. If you're looking for daycare options, they are great. Kids Club on the Pike is perfect for a birthday party venue, before or after school care, preschool. Kids Club on the Pike. Call Kristen today, 401 443 5336. 401 443 5336. Kids Club on the Pike. Now, they are located right on Plainfield Pike off of 295 on the Cranston-Johnson line, but they have different locations, specifically in Warwick. So again, if you're looking for daycare or maybe before or after school care or preschool for your children or grandchildren, contact them. Kids Club on the Pike, 401 443 5336. I want to remind people that people can watch, and they certainly don't have to in any way comment, but I want to show you, for those that are watching, I'll show you an example of someone who clearly doesn't fully understand the gravity of the situation and that would make a statement about this. President Trump going to Davos with all the elites, he claimed. Well, the fact of the matter is all the world leaders are there. And all the leaders, President Trump gave a very important speech. He's having different meetings. President Trump understands the gravity of going to a summit and meeting of this sort in order to meet and speak with other world leaders. So that's a complete fundamental misunderstanding of why the president of the United States would attend something of that nature. This gathering is very unique. It's who's who in the tech world. It's all foreign leaders. I saw President Trump was meeting with, I think it was the Egyptians. He's going to be meeting with other NATO leaders. For someone to describe that as it's a gathering of the elites, I see that as someone that has a fundamental misunderstanding of what it is. And that's fine, but you could certainly read up on it. But it's an extraordinary gathering on the world stage that the people that gather there and the meetings are wildly important. I believe, and by the way, it could be someone's take on something. And I'll give you a concrete example. Last year, Rhode Island Governor Dan McKee boycotted the inauguration. Now, he decided um, to not go. And then what did we see? Number one, it could have been a chance to be in front of the administration. Number two, you're the governor of the state. And the number of people that voted for President Trump in Rhode Island, 45%, it certainly warranted him going. And it's not a matter of him going just Cumberland's Dan McKee. He had an obligation to go to that. Many times you learn in business, and maybe some people don't have a business background, but a big part of business is networking. And as I have talked about, what I thought was so extraordinary was not that Governor McKee blew off, and you don't see the local media talk about this, by the way, but um, not that he blew off the inauguration. It's what happened the day after the inauguration. Because the day after the inauguration, there was a tremendous, huge press conference. And one of the people at that press conference where they talked about making a $500 billion investment in the United States. And excuse me. And one of the people at that press briefing was Larry Ellison. Larry Ellison, a titan, Oracle, looking to expand his empire, huge racing enthusiast. Now, I understand the parochial nature that some people would say, that's right, Governor McKee, you don't go to be with the elites at the inauguration. You don't go. Show him by not going. As I've said, I think that's small-minded. I think that's very parochial. I view that as probably the view of kind of like the uneducated blue collar mindset of I don't go or I got to wear a tie and shake hands with that. But Larry Ellison, the next day, as I said, Larry Ellison was at that inauguration. Larry Ellison owns a home in Newport. As I mentioned a year ago, what a golden opportunity missed. Picture you're the governor of Rhode Island, and at the inauguration and at one of the balls or just some of the ceremony. And there were ceremonies when you're the governor of a state and there's only 50 of them, that you get, real VIP access. What an opportunity, whoever the governor is, to walk up to a Larry Ellison and say, "Hey, by the way, I'm the governor of Rhode Island, and I know you own a home in Newport. And boy, we would love to have you talk about exactly what we might be able to work on to get you to, do something in Rhode Island." And what is Larry Ellison, this business titan, who's, oh, okay, yeah, great. Calls one of his assistants. This is the governor of Rhode Island, and we're going to set up a meeting. And now the guy's doing a press conference with announcing a $500 billion investment. What do you think? 500 billion with a B, by the way, not 500 million. $500 billion investment. What would it take for Larry Ellison to say, yeah, we'll take a meeting, and then say to his people, listen, put something together. Maybe we will invest 50 million in racing in Newport, or we're going to invest 50 million in the state of Rhode Island to, he has a home in Newport. He clearly, when you're Larry Ellison, billionaire, he could go anywhere in the world. He could have a home anywhere in the world, and he chose Newport for the sailing. So there's something there. You have his attention. Maybe a $50 million investment turns into a $100 million investment. Maybe he says, I really like the ability to do business in this state and deal with the state, and they're very easy to deal with. And what started as a $50 million investment has turned into a $500 million investment. It's possible, but I'll tell you that doesn't happen if you're not in the room. That doesn't happen if you're not there, if you're not putting in the effort. So, as far as the president, there's certain areas the president places the president needs to go, and that's one of them. So, I have a problem that just dismisses everything as, "Oh, snooty elites." He's trying to convince world leaders that we need Greenland, and that's not gonna be an easy negotiation, and you open the door and start talking to them. And anyone that has actually done business knows, the most effective form of business, and President Trump is one of those individuals, is in person. It's not just through an email, it's not just over the phone. He likes to get in front of people, he likes to read people, he likes to get a sense of them and wants them to get a sense of him. Now they have identified that Greenland is very valuable to the United States and for our security. And for those that ignore it are ignoring the fact that Russia and China seem very interested in that area, the Arctic region. Now, us getting control of Venezuela strategically makes a lot of sense. The old expression, you're not paranoid if there are people against you. An alliance of China and Russia can't be ignored. And the administration feels that Greenland, people can make jokes all they want, but have identified it as be very valuable strategically. As President Trump had said, we're not going to invade. We're not going to send troops in. Let's bring some of the decision makers to the White House. Let's bring them in the Oval Office. The Oval Office is the number one home court advantage in the world. The Patriots like to play their games at Gillette. Every team does. The Oval Office is the number one most powerful home court advantage of any home court advantage on any team or dealing. Anyone that has ever been there seemingly starts to melt at the significance and the weight of it. So let's bring some of the decision makers in and let's secure Greenland for the United States as opposed to allowing Russia and China to move freely around there. I have faith in this administration. I have faith that they're not just doing this for the sake of doing it, that it strategically makes sense. I also think people need to sometimes realize, and you're not going to get this from the press, and you're not going to get this from some of the Democrat leaders, but is it possible that we have intelligence that we're not letting on about? The United States has the most sophisticated intelligence. All the other countries, the NATO countries, the countries that we protect, all of those countries depend on us, our military, and especially the United States has unique systems for intelligence gathering. So if our military says, strategically, if we could have Greenland to the north and then Venezuela, it just sets up, it expands our function of how we can protect ourselves. And countries like Canada, what would happen to Canada if we didn't protect Canada? What would happen to Mexico if we didn't protect Mexico? Some of the foreign countries, they can talk about they're going to try to align with China or Russia. But, the European nations, they can complain all they want about Russia and Ukraine, but the key component is where is the United States on this? So, but I get that some people have such a hatred for the president. They can't see beyond it. I also think it's obscene how I think it's obscene how some individuals, the misinformation they're given and how they repeat things that are like you can't have a conversation with someone that's just all they do is repeat horrific things about President Trump. But I want to come back to this business of, I mean, if people are really saying, why did she, I'm talking about the woman in Minneapolis, why did she have to get out of the car? Then you're not following the law. The law should apply to everyone. That's not accurate. No, the law doesn't. You may not realize that. But if you're involved with law enforcement, when a police officer says, step out of the vehicle, turn off your engine, may I see a form of ID? Uh, that is that they're sworn in. They carry a badge and a gun. That's not the time to then argue. That's not the time to flee. So for people to, and it's interesting because I heard some of this. She had a right to defend herself. I heard that from some people. People that think, okay, I'm somewhere and the police are there. Well, I have just as much a right to push them as they're going to push me. And that officer wants to put me in handcuffs. I have the right to defend myself and put him or her in handcuffs. No, you're totally, totally wrong. Wrongo. So, no, it doesn't work that way. But I do blame some of the individuals. I mean, that woman seemed that um, Renee Good, she just seemed lost. And essentially her family was saying she was lost. But my point is, I think it's dangerous when some of this stuff goes unchallenged, and I talk about that group locally. There's a group locally. Now, the press, the local press, especially the Providence Journal, for whatever reason, they love this group and they try to write positive stories about them. And they're tremendous activists. And do you understand this group, the Deportation Defense Network, they encourage people, use your car to block in an ICE officer. If you see ICE, call us. We're going to send people there. We're going to blow horns. We're going to blow whistles. Block them in. You have the right to protest in front of them. If they go to arrest someone, you grab them. You have the right. They are sending these people into harm's way is in essence what they're doing. So no, that's not the name of the game. No, you actually don't have the right to do that. And these people that just go along, that's right. I have the right. I have the right to peacefully block you into your car with my car. I have the right to peacefully protest. And the way I do that is by blowing my horn, yelling at you, throwing things at you, and trying to block you and help the person escape. No, you actually don't have the right. Those people have a fundamental misunderstanding. What I'm talking about is I think there should be media coverage that these types of organizations encourage people to break the law. They encourage them. You go and you want to get involved and they say, here's what you can legally do. You can use your car as a weapon. You can block them in. If they're trying to get out of their car, you use your car on the driver's side, block them into the vehicle. It's totally legal. That's your form of protesting. You have the right to throw things at them. I mean, I know of course it sounds crazy, but there are people that are doing this. Just like those people that went into the church. Oh no, we have the right. We have the First Amendment right to go in there to stop their service. Yep, because we're right. We're on the right side of this. So we absolutely enjoy the right to go into that church and stop the service because we have freedom of speech. And the person leading them is a certifiable lunatic, that woke farmer. Folks, this portion of the program is brought to you by Serve Pro of Providence. Now remember, Serve Pro of Providence, when disaster strikes, call Serve Pro of Providence. They're fast, they're thorough, they're professional. If you have a fire, you're going to have fire damage. You're going to have smoke damage. You're going to have water damage. They need to put out the fire. Serve Pro of Providence. Call them today, 401 941 5500. 401 941 5500. They're fast, they're thorough, they're professional, from fire damage to water damage. Serve Pro of Providence, 401 941 5500. I also want to remind people that um, my pages, my platforms and program, it's not for everybody. I get that. I mean, number one, I like people who follow the news. Number two, it's not freedom of speech to repeat false information. And I do run into this, where people I do run into it. I try to move past it. But we do encounter people that think if they want to believe 1 plus 1 is 3, that they have that freedom of speech. And I try to explain that's not freedom of speech. You're convoluting facts. We ran into it with Johnston the other night. The Johnston police put out a press release, and we have footage of the Johnston police and the shell casings. And the Johnston police and the detectives and BCI, they went to that street in Johnston where they have this late night party, and it started with a fight and then ended up with shots fired. They were shooting at a vehicle fleeing. And so you have the police examine the scene, and they find shell casings and ballistics. And there's video of the shooting, as a matter of fact. And then, we have people that come on some of my platforms and they say, well, there was no shooting. That's fake news. And I respond, not all the time, but I respond, no, there was a shooting. The police put out the statement. There's video of it. They sent detectives there. The person they were chasing ended up in Cranston. He had stab wounds, but they were firing at him. Of course, he's not cooperating. The people back on the street where the party was, they're saying, oh no, we didn't see or hear anything. Boy, that's surprising. But there's things like that's not disputable. It's not fake news. It's not well, in my opinion, it wasn't a shoot. Well, there clearly was a shooting. And it's not like I'm saying it. God bless me. The Johnston police, investigated, and the detectives investigated, and they found the shell casings. Well, what about free speech? That's not free speech. That's not free speech. 1 plus 1 will never be 3. I'll give you obviously an example. Listen, if you want to say free speech, taxes are not high enough. That's your opinion. I don't think taxes are high enough. I think taxes should be higher. I think we should tax higher taxes on everyone that makes over a certain amount of money. That's your opinion. That's free speech. I don't think people agree with you, but you certainly enjoy that. But 1 plus 1 is not free speech. Folks, I want to remind you, if you are, now I'm not ill, I just had a sneeze, but stop in and see the Queen of Health at Marie at It's My Health. Are you familiar with It's My Health? 1099 Mendon Road in Cumberland, diagonally across from Davenport Restaurant. It's My Health. And especially if you were sick or someone's sick now, stop in and see Marie. She has everything to, number one, make you feel better. Number two, make you healthy again. And number three, restore your body to health. It's My Health, 1099 Mendon Road in Cumberland. Look for that historic white church with the flag out front. It's My Health. And tell Marie what's wrong with yourself or someone else. Well, folks, thank you for tuning in. If you are listening to the radio, stay tuned for the 2 o'clock news. Everyone else, thank you, Debbie. Enjoy this Wednesday.